Hey, Pro-Life Jen, this is Kristen Hawkins. Welcome back to the Kristen Hawkins Show. Today's episode, we're going to discuss the weird and wrong interpretation of the 14th Amendment, which gave us Roe versus Wade in 1973. Ironically, it's the 14th Amendment that could be carving the path to federal protections for preborn children in America. So it's kind of exciting too. Also, I wanted to give you a little plug about our latest effort to defund Planned Parenthood. It's obviously back in the news. Happy dance. And I've got you covered with just a quick update. The immigration issue is kind of hot right now. It's been in the news lately. You've probably been hearing a lot about the question of birthright citizenship. Because there's a clause in the 14th Amendment that says, quote, all persons born or naturalized United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state where they reside. So there's been a big legal debate in the justice system for more than a century about whether this means that anyone born in the United States automatically becomes a citizen or not. Others say it also depends on the parents. That's what's so interesting today, because President Trump said he was going to end birthright citizenship because women were knowingly crossing the border just to give birth, so then their children can be an American, have all the privileges for American citizenship. And it also helps the mother come to the United States too. What's interesting is the people who would argue for birthright citizenship, so keeping this kind of scheme going, are also in the camp that would lead you to believe that the child in the womb has zero protections and can be subject to the most gruesome, painful forms of death, despite committing no crime themselves. Make it make sense. I mean, honestly, these people have to pick a lane. It gets crazier, though. In 1973, the 14th Amendment was used to create the, quote, right to abortion. The Supreme Court's majority opinion in Roe versus Wade held that privacy, the right to privacy, was an implied right found in the 14th Amendment's liberty interest, but not seen, and it includes a woman's right to decide whether or not to terminate a, quote, pregnancy. You can read more about it if you go to studentsforlife.org/learn. But there was no right to abortion, and there was no commonly thought of right to abortion when the drafters of the 14th Amendment actually wrote, and then the legislatures ratified the 14th Amendment. That wasn't on anyone's minds. There was no right. In fact, there were at least 36 laws in the United States prohibiting abortion at the time the 14th Amendment was drafted in 1857. And it wasn't even until 100 years later that suddenly American lawyers magically found the right to abortion hidden in invisible ink in the 14th Amendment. In fact, there's a fact out there that I found interesting. I found last year, in the late 1860s, when the 14th Amendment was ratified, the state of Ohio, the legislature, because when you have a amendment, you have to have 37 state legislators ratify the amendment after it passes Congress, right? So it had to pass Congress and then go state legislatures. The same state legislature that voted to ratify the 14th Amendment in Ohio, the same makeup, the same guys, right? They're all men. The same men who voted to ratify the 14th Amendment, that same legislative session voted to acknowledge that abortion was wrong because it killed unborn persons. Now, wouldn't it be ironic, though, if we could get that very same 14th Amendment that was used to create this defunct right to abortion to actually give preborn persons federal protections? Wouldn't that be sweet justice? I think it would. Here's the deal. The same section of the 14th Amendment that talks about birthright citizenship also talks about due process of law. It reads, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. But unlike the birthright citizenship clause, the due process clause is totally clear in what it means. It means every person in every state has a right to due process of law before being deprived life. It means every person in every state has the right to due process of the law before they are deprived of life. There's two extremely important implications of this due process clause on abortion in the United States. First is that abortion is federal. Take note, President Trump. I've been saying this forever. And it also says Congress has an obligation to protect preborn children at the federal level. That's like literally their job. Elected officials at their core are supposed to protect the citizens in their district, their state, their nation. Due process applies to everyone in the United States. Abortion violates due process by depriving children in the womb of life without any due process of law. Therefore, abortion is a federal issue. Not only is abortion a federal issue, but the 14th Amendment makes it clear that Congress has the duty to enforce that amendment. Here's how the legal scholars at the National Constitution Center describe it. Quote, Section 5 of the 14th Amendment vests Congress with the authority to adopt appropriate language to enforce the other parts of the amendment, most notably the provisions of Section 1. As Senator Jacob M. Howard explained, Section 5 enables Congress, in case that the state shall enact laws in conflict with the principles of the amendment, to correct that legislation by a formal congressional enactment. There is absolutely no doubt that a state that still allows poisoning, dismembering, and suctioning children in the womb to death is in conflict with the principles of the 14th Amendment. Right now, there is in Congress a life at conception in the U.S. House of Representatives, already introduced. We used to have it introduced in the House, in the U.S. Senate, but Senator Rand Paul is slacking and hasn't introduced it yet. This bill is very simple. It's one of the main bills Students for Life Action is promoting, is pushing in Congress. It's very simple. It just says that the Congress must implement equal protection under the 14th Article of the Amendment to the Constitution for the right to life of each born and preborn human person. Super simple. All we have to do, say no. 14th Amendment tells us abortion is federal and that federal legislators, Congress has a duty to protect the due process of every human person. So let's say it louder for the people in the back or in the Oval Office. Abortion is a federal issue. So the next time someone tells you that abortion belongs merely at the state level, not in Congress, tell them to go back to civics class and reread the Fourth Amendment closely. Our final topic today is on defunding Planned Parenthood. Sorry, this is a short podcast. If you're planning to do a long drive with me, I apologize. Go back and listen to old ones. Speaking of old podcasts, in case you missed it, I did over an hour-long podcast at the end of 2024 in December about why President Trump must defund Planned Parenthood. I made the case for why they should be defunded, like beyond just killing babies. I went into other reasons. There shouldn't be any more, but there you go. And how they could be defunded. I even talk about something called debarment. So go back and I'll put it in the show notes. Go back, watch that podcast if you were too busy getting ready for Christmas, because that is super important. But I'm going to recap this for you. The fight to defund Planned Parenthood has been going on for years. In fact, it was one of the first national efforts that Students for Life America even engaged in. I remember I was pregnant with my son. It was 2008 when we organized the first ever defund Planned Parenthood protest. It was crazy. At the time, there was this guy like Congressman Mike Pence who had just authored a bill to defund Planned Parenthood. I became fast friends with everyone who worked at his office because no one had probably been paying attention to it. Been kind of doing this for 18 years. The biggest step we could have towards defunding Planned Parenthood happened during President Trump's first administration. This was the biggest step we've ever gotten. And that is when he directed through an EO, executive order called the Protect Life Rule, the Department of Health and Human Services, to defund Planned Parenthood receiving federal Title X family planning funds, which is ridiculous. They get family planning funds. They literally kill families. That defunded Planned Parenthood about $60 million. President Trump also had an EO in the first administration. He's already put it back in place in his new administration, the Global Protect Life Rule, which defunds Planned Parenthood International, says that we're not going to give USAID money or any foreign aid money to any foreign abortion facility that commits abortions or promotes abortions. Those were good things, but that doesn't really fully defund Planned Parenthood because, as you know from my podcast, they received like $700 million from us. So $60 million, $700 million, not kind of close. Title X funding was just a drop in the bucket. Planned Parenthood took tons of money and continues to take tons of money from taxpayers in every little nook and cranny they can find it. Do you remember when there was that Zika virus in Florida that was mosquito-borne virus that they said could lead to miscarriages? Yeah, Planned Parenthood got money for that. They were going to prevent miscarriages by doing more abortions. You remember in COVID, there was that paycheck protection program where small nonprofits, small businesses could apply for federal funds to cover employees when businesses were shut down. Planned Parenthood didn't qualify because they're a $2 billion organization. They received like $80 million and never paid it back. Completely illegal. The Department of Commerce just like gave them money. Completely crazy. Planned Parenthood gets money all the time. There's actually 12 federal spending budgets in multiple agencies that you have to go and to like root out all the Planned Parenthood funding. And what we know from the Biden administration, and I've talked about this before because of their interagency task force on abortion that they set up after Roe fell and Dobbs was handed down, they've found little nuggets and ways to like sneak abortion funding everywhere in the federal government. So it's not going to be a one and done simple project. To truly one and done this, the easiest way to do it is to cut the money. To cut the money is to investigate Planned Parenthood, suspend them from applying for federal funds, then debar them from receiving federal funds. That defunds them. And it would defund them for a period of 3 years. This is a harder thing to do. Most people don't fully understand it. I go into it in that long podcast. I actually even read a letter from Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas herself, who actually wanted the Biden DOJ to start debarring government contractors. This is a common thing used when you are working in a government agency and you feel like a government contractor, someone getting our taxpayer dollars, is lying, isn't using the money correctly, is engaged in unsavory business practices. And once you debar them in one agency, it actually becomes government-wide. They can't receive or apply for funds for 3 years. That is like the biggest thing we can do. But we have to keep saying that word debar, because even members of Congress don't even fully know what it is. Trust me, I've had conversations with them. So that's something the government can do, and that would be more at the executive level branch. That's something that, Russ Vought, who's 100% pro-life, true believer, even spoke at the National Pro-Life Summit. He's the new director of the Office of Management Budget. He could do this through OMB. That would then end up being government-wide. Something that we can talk about the legislative level to defund. Well, no, I'm going to go into the political level. So let's talk about. So we got the executive level. That could be an executive order. That can be debarment. That could be DOJ and whatever legally way they can do it. That's kind of murky sometimes, like what is DOJ illegally allowed to do. Then we go from the executive, we can go into the judicial, right? So there's a big case. There's going to be a hearing on April 2nd. Our team will be out in front of the Supreme Court. Oral arguments in Supreme Court based off of a South Carolina law. So the case is called Kerr v. Planned Parenthood South Atlantic. So the state of South Carolina said, hey, Planned Parenthood, you're evil and kill babies. Women who receive Medicaid funding can't use that Medicaid funding at Planned Parenthood, right? So it doesn't take away Medicaid funding from any woman. It just says, hey, women who qualify receive free health care. You can't use our taxpayer free health care dollars at Planned Parenthood. You have to go somewhere else. So Planned Parenthood shopped around, found women to sue the state of North Carolina saying, we are entitled to use taxpayer money at the clinic of our choice, and that is the place that kills baby, Planned Parenthood. So, yeah. Now it's the Supreme Court. So the question in the case is, can a state defund, say that no, our state taxpayer dollars are not going to go to Planned Parenthood through state Medicaid? If this case goes through, if the case South Carolina is victorious, this will carve a path for all the other pro-life states to also defund Planned Parenthood out of Medicaid funding, which is a large part of their money. That's like healthcare money for people who can't afford healthcare. If you remember from last week's episode, I talked a lot about how Planned Parenthood is kind of in a crisis. And the New York Times is even reporting that. And their affiliates are operating in the fiscal red. They can't afford to pay anybody. So more states saying, no, you can't use, if you're on Medicaid, you can't use your Medicaid dollars that go with you to Planned Parenthood. That would be massive. Almost 100 members of Congress have already signed letters in support of this case. So this is a big deal. There's also another case, judicial branch at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals outside Texas is currently set to rule on a Medicaid fraud case out of Texas, because Texas brought a fraud case to Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast, the big abortionist there, saying that they have been, the state alleged more than $1.8 billion in damages related to alleged fraudulent Medicaid claims. So basically, they were double billing the government for Medicaid services they were providing women. This would be massive because this would prove that Planned Parenthood is a fraudster. It should be used to debarring them federally and used as a reason to debar Planned Parenthood nationally because of what's happening in Texas. This case would be huge. Hopefully that inspires attorneys general and other state legislative leaders to start going after and investigating Planned Parenthood in their states and how they're using Medicaid fraud. Because I tell you what, you can't really practice vice virtuously, right? If you kill babies for a living, you're probably doing some other things wrong. Now, let's go from judicial to legislative. So Congress, a week and a half ago, passed the first step of the budget, right? Which was like every big deal because there's like no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. I'm still waiting on the no tax for families over four children. Come on, Trump. You've already hinted at it. Let's go. Elon wants big families and more babies. Come on, let's do it. But anyway, so that's the first step, but it's like not final. What we've got to do is defund them legislatively. And this gets confusing because they're in the Senate, there's something called the filibuster. And before you take a vote on the bill in the Senate, you have to take a vote to end debate on the bill. It's called invoking cloture, CLOTURE, right? And this is how filibusters happen in the Senate because you have to have 60 votes to end the debate on the bill before you can pass a bill with a simple majority. And this is a good thing because when Republicans are in a minority, this protects, and it did during the Biden administration, it protect a lot of really terrible things from going into effect. It protects the 51 majority from rolling over the country and the bill that they wanted to pass, which would have mandated abortion all 9 months and taxpayer funding in every state. That was the bill that they tried to pass, but the filibuster saved us from that, not having to save those babies. But anyway, but the filibuster can be annoying when you're a majority and you want to get shit done. Okay. So how do you defund Planned Parenthood? There's a bill in the Congress, in the House, and the Senate to defund Planned Parenthood. Great. We want to get more sponsors. The problem is we don't got 60 votes to end the debate on the bill to actually get a 51 vote on it, even if we had 51 votes, which I don't think we have 51 votes because the Republicans and President Trump have expanded this big tent philosophy in the GOP, and they're letting some not pro-life people in the GOP, which always ends in bad things. So, Kristen, how can we legislatively defund Planned Parenthood? We can do this through a process called budget reconciliation. This is how the Republicans are going to get a budget through. Because with reconciliation, it's a unique opportunity. We actually did a whole blog on Students for Life's blog, Students for Life Actions blog site about this because it's kind of messy. Because Republicans have 219 seats out of 434 seats in the House. Getting a lot of things done is going to be very difficult to keep everybody together. But reconciliation is a process where senators can go and congressmen, House representatives can go line by line and determine what should be in the budget. And the committees, one in the Senate, one in the House, meet and kind of come together on a budget. And you don't have to go through a full vote, and you don't have to invoke cloture, and you don't have to worry about that pesky little filibuster in the Senate. Reconciliation votes only require procedurally 51 votes. So they don't need Democrat support to make the budget happen. The reconciliation bill, once the two committees in the Senate and the House iron out, the House will vote for it, then the Senate will vote for it, but the Senate doesn't need to invoke cloture. Kind of a big deal. So that is how legislatively, and that deadline is going to come up, I think, April 15th. So you're going to see Students for Life America, Susan Manthey List, all of our friends. We're going to actually be lobbying on Capitol Hill on March 27th. We have announced Defund Planned Parenthood Across America campaigns that whole weekend, where we want folks going to members of Congress, district offices, Planned Parenthoods, and putting up pink cross displays of how many children Planned Parenthood abort every single day to make it known that the pro-life movement is demanding that we finally defund Planned Parenthood through budget reconciliation. So you're going to be hearing more from us. Stay tuned on that. So I've gone through executive, judicial, legislative. I have taken the approach of let's throw as much of up against the wall as we can. We'll see what sticks. Fight in every single aspect we can, and that is what we're doing at Students for Life America. That is why it bags underneath my eyes. Hey, Pro-Life Gen, the application process for Students for Life America's National Leaders Collective is now open. The National Leaders Collective prepares the pro-life generation's top student leaders to lead in careers and volunteer activism that will transform the pro-life movement in college, high school, and well beyond. If you are a pro-life activist in a Students for Life group looking to pursue a pro-life career, this program is for you. I literally created it for you in mind. We have 8 unique year-long opportunities, fellowships. They're each focused on turning leaders with specific talents and passions into lifelong pro-life activists. As a member of the National Leaders Collective, you'll receive a free trip to Washington, D.C. this June for kickoff weekend at the National Leaders Collective, where you'll even be able to participate at the National Celebrate Life weekend, mentorship from a leader in the pro-life movement all year, monthly or bi-monthly training calls with other pro-life student leaders like you, and free resources and opportunities to continue your pro-life career. I have seen some incredible leaders go through this program over the years and now lead in national pro-life groups, such as Live Action, Pro-Love Ministries, Alliance Defending Freedom, Secular Pro-Life, Justice for All, and even here at Students for Life America, and many more, some that have been literally started by alumni. Applications are open through Thursday, March 6th, so visit studentsforlife.org/leadership to learn more and apply. Hope to see you in DC in June. Thank you guys for joining me for this episode of Kristen Hawkins Show. Make sure you subscribe and follow along for more discussions of like this and participate in the discussion on YouTube. If you are not a subscriber of my daily text line, I encourage you to do that. You can text 53445 to Kristen. You have to spell my name right. And then you will get a daily text from me about interesting news items, something I think you should talk about, post it on social, be thinking about how to brainstorming, how do we overcome this battle. So make sure you sign up for that. Until next week, keep speaking up for the voiceless and stand for life.